Okay, I'll get started then. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar, Navigating COVID-19, How Restaurants and Bars Are Faring During the Pandemic. So thank you all for joining us. We're in the midst of rebuilding our webinar series, so keep an eye out for future webinars coming this fall. We expect that we will have an average of 2 webinars a week, so it'll be pretty exciting and lots of activity as we get into the fall. My name is Patrick Sullivan, and I'm the President and CEO of the Halifax Chamber of Commerce and your host for the day. Today's webinar is about bars, restaurants, and how they've been doing during COVID-19 and how we expect them to do as the months unfold, which is a topic very near and dear to my heart, as I tend to spend a lot of time in both restaurants and bars. So it's no secret that certainly those establishments and the entire hospitality sector took quite a hit over the last number of months, and bars and restaurants are doing everything they can to stay afloat. Our guest speakers today are here to let us know how the industry is doing and what the future of the industry might look like. We've also had many members submit questions for our speakers, so I have a long list of questions here, and I'm going to ask them on your behalf. Please feel free to type any of your questions into the, I'm just looking at my screen, into the chat box or the Q&A. So the Q&A would be the preferred way to go. So you can see a Q&A at the bottom, but there's also chat. I think with the chat, you're able to speak to the panelists. I would encourage you to address to all panelists and attendees so that people can see your questions if you're on the chat. On the Q&A, I believe everyone will be able to see your questions. I think you can also ask questions anonymously if you're concerned about anything, but I don't think you have to worry about that. Given that Gordon and Luc are in the restaurant business, I think they're both pretty friendly people. So let me start by introducing our guest. A short introduction. We have Luc Erjavec, the Vice President of Atlantic Canada at Restaurants Canada. Welcome, Luc. Restaurants Canada is Canada's, or Luc will be Canada's national voice for restaurants on this call. Luc, go ahead. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Patrick. Yeah, I'm Luc Erjavec. I'm Vice President of Atlantic Canada for Restaurants Canada. We're a national association that works on behalf of the restaurant industry. I am the Vice President for Atlantic Canada. I do lobbying at the federal level and all 4 provinces, fully engaged in all 4 provinces. As an association, we're a non-profit organization with, that runs the Canadian Food and Beverage Show, as well as we have a tremendous group buying program to help businesses with their purchases of restaurant products. Happy to be here and answer any of your questions if I can help. Okay, great.
Thank you very much, Luc. And we also have Gordon Stewart, who is the Executive Director of the Restaurant Association of Nova Scotia. Obviously, Nova Scotia's voice for restaurants, primarily at the provincial level. But Gordon, I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the Restaurant Association as well.
Well, I consider myself to be the chief cook and bottle washer, meaning I do a wide range of jobs, particularly since COVID has been around. So we are a nonprofit association, much like Luc's. We represent quite a wide representation across Nova Scotia. Predominantly our members are independent owner operators, so that's been our main focus for the time. We actually have 2 arms to the association. One, we work in the public domain in the marketplace, and we also work in the business marketplace. So we're dealing with 2 sides of the market, which is not normal for an organization. So we're marketing restaurants, and we're also working their behalf on the business side. So, and we run 2 monthly newsletters. We have 2 combined websites. We run a provincial guidebook for restaurants. We've developed a lot of useful tools for restaurants. We developed a guidebook to how to open and operate restaurants in Nova Scotia, which is free and available to anyone. So that's kind of been our focus. So hitting the pandemic here is kind of an interesting mode, and I know some of the questions are going to address that. Just a last thought, I'd like to thank both Luc and Restaurants Canada, because I think early we were able to get out. We were the first group that went through Dr. Strang's filter. Not an easy filter to get through sometimes, So having gotten through with that, that set the pattern for an awful lot of people. And actually a shout out to the Chamber, because I think the Chamber, Patrick, you and your team have done an excellent job, particularly in the area of drawing so many sectors back together that have been very, very useful, I think, in helping a lot of sectors through the pandemic. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Gordon. Okay. All right. Well, now I'm going to, just to let people know, I did have a question already, whether folks are muted or not, and they are all muted. We're using the Zoom webinar capability. So sadly, folks will be unable to speak, but they're certainly able to type. I hope they're able to type. They can provide, they can ask questions through either the Q&A or the chat, and I'll be happy to pass those on, although I do have a long list of questions already. So Gordon, I think I'll start with you. Can you tell us how restaurants in Nova Scotia are doing at this time?
Well, probably not a very big secret that they're probably doing on the terrible scale. I think without question that what we're seeing right now is restaurants that are doing about 30 to 50% of their normal volume based upon same period last year. That hasn't changed much since June. It's upped a little bit through the time period, but that's basically where they are. It's a very difficult pattern they're in because there literally is no market for them and no growth, and so they've got a lot of challenges. And as everyone knows, we're heading to fall and cooler weather, and that's going to change another big pattern that's going to happen to our industry. So not in good shape right now, and forecast not looking any better.
Right. Okay. Well, not terribly encouraging words to start, but let's see if we can get there. And Luc, I guess I'd ask you the same question, and you have that slightly broader perspective for Atlantic Canada and even a national perspective. How are restaurants and hospitality doing?
Yeah, echoing on what Gordon said, this crisis has been, just devastating. When we look at it, we are modeling for a year. Our best case scenario is we're going to see sales down about 28%. Our worst case scenario is somewhere in the range of 49%. So that's close to $1 billion in lost sales in Nova Scotia we expect this year from restaurants. A lot of restaurants now are operating, but the chief concern is profitability. We survey every 2 weeks our membership, and right now, in terms of restaurants, with full service restaurants, that's what where you sit down to eat, 62% are operating at a loss, and 22% are just breaking even. So it's only about 16% of full service restaurants are actually profitable at this time. And that's why we're really concerned on a go forward basis when things like the wage subsidy disappear or patios start to disappear, how we're going to get through this crisis. Because we are the #4 employer in this province. And it is so important that we're a healthy industry because we impact every single community across this province.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Luc, to Gordon's reference at the beginning, I do remember, I think one of the first documents that Dr. Strang approved was the restaurant plan. I know you and Restaurants Canada had a big hand in that. How has that been working? Have restaurants been following the plan? Has the plan changed? Are you getting good guidance from public health? At this point, are there changes? Maybe I'll stop there. I won't keep going with questions, sir.
The guide, I'm very pleased the way that turned out, and credit to Gordon. Gordon and I jumped on this together and really decided to once we understood what government wanted, which took a while. And so we based our guide upon best practices that we're seeing across Canada and internationally. Gordon and I rolled up our sleeves and put this together, and it really became a bit of a Bible for any restaurant reopening, and it's amazing. I'm down in Digby County right now, and the number of restaurants I've gone into, and it's sitting on the counter, a photocopy of this document. So I think it really gave the industry some guidelines to how to start, where to start, because this, no one has ever experienced this, and no one knew where to get started. And I think what it really gave was a flexibility to personalize your experience in every restaurant with this guide. It was a little tough with government, to be frank. it was a bit of a moving curve for them. Some things when they use a term like highly recommended, does that mean we have to do it or we don't have to do it? Things like that caused confusion initially. And it was a bit of a learning experience, and we changed as we went along. But all in all, the government has had a concern, and even Doc Strang for the welfare of the industry, and really wanted to protect and lower the risk for customers and our staff while allowing us to operate. And sure, we'd love to operate as normal, but it's a tough. It's tough with these restrictions, but all in all, I think it's been a good guide. It really was a template for most businesses. And I think it really helped, all restaurants across the province and really gave them a place to get started, because many were just, quite frankly, overwhelmed and didn't know where to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gordon, sort of building on that a little bit, the guidelines initially were that only 50% capacity. The government would say now that we're at 100% capacity. Are we really at 100% capacity if you look at the guide, or what do you think of that comment?
Well, it's certainly a very misleading comment. As Luke knows, and most of the industry knows, we're really at 50% and less still. It did not make much difference. There is an advantage if you happen to have a very large space that you might get up closer to 100%, but that's rare across the province. Most restaurants are very tight spaces, As a matter of fact, the smaller operators are really handicapped, because if you're a small coffee shop that was tight, you've got no room at all. And that's really the crux of the matter there, that was a very misleading statement. And again, that right now, most restaurants still operate of less than 50% of their normal capacity.
Wow. So, I mean, we've gone from March, when everything sort of shut down and, restaurants were closed for in-restaurant dining. And now they're open. We've got patios. Gordon, do you feel patrons' confidence is returning, or has it returned? Maybe I should kind of go all the way to, has it returned, or what do you think?
So the dining inside has been a bit of a challenge for our sector. It started off very low and it's moved up. It started around 42, 43%. It's up close to 50% now, but that hasn't really changed a lot. And I think like Luke said earlier, and we would say that our biggest fear is that when patio season leaves, are these people going to migrate and sit down inside restaurants? And the big hope is yes, but the statistics are not supporting that right now. And that's a concern. And it's unfortunate, because people feel uncomfortable because they think for some reason it's not safe in restaurants. The fact is, you're probably safer in a restaurant than you are anywhere else. I went through surgery not too long ago, and I can tell you, I'd much rather eat in a restaurant than go through the surgical room that I went through initially. So it's a big, tough nut to crack, and it's perception, and it's a consumer perception that's not well founded, unfortunately.
Yeah, Luke, what would you say to people to give them some confidence about restaurants and visiting restaurants?
Well, I think the public has to be aware that we are experts in cleaning and disinfecting. We were doing it long before COVID came along. I like to say we now disinfect and sanitize on steroids. So we're experts in that. We train. We're working with our staff. We have an obligation to screen our staff. So I think we have done everything possible to minimize the risk for our staff and customers. So, it's tough for customers to crack this. It's actually interesting, when government said, oh, you're open, you can open your dining rooms, we're back to normal. That's really not the case. 48% of members said when they opened their dining room, it was a negative impact because your costs have gone up and you're not doing enough sales to cover those costs. So, so that is, probably when we have a message for government, and I know, Gordon, it's the same. Our main message is just because we're open does not mean we're anywhere close to normal. We are operating at reduced capacities, and, we have to do everything we can to encourage the customers to come to our businesses. And, as an industry, we have to continue to be vigilant, to screen our employees, to wear a mask, to disinfect, keep a handle on customers, because we are in an alcohol environment, in a lot of cases, to make sure that we're following the protocols. And, all in all, as an industry, I think we're doing a tremendous job, but we just have to be vigilant.
Yeah. So just a mention to everyone, certainly lots of opportunity for questions. So please type in a question. Happy to ask that if you'd have some thoughts for Gordon or for Luc. Gordon, the bubble started, oh gosh, I guess at the beginning of July. Maybe it was July 5th. Anyway, the beginning of July. Has there been a real bump with the bubble? Have restaurants said, "Oh my gosh, once that bubble opened, we've seen a real lift," or has there been a significant change that you've heard of?
Well, if we're talking about the Atlantic bubble, there's been little impact. It's not really come that much to the province. Definitely a little bit, but it's not really registering very much overall. I think a lot of that early bubble, in my opinion, ended up to be VFR, visiting friends and relatives. And so that really didn't really migrate back into the restaurants overall, maybe a little bit to the outdoor patios and stuff like that. And it's also showing up more in rural areas. If there is an influence, it has a bigger impact in rural areas than it does actually in the city. City's actually taken a harder per capita hit for customers than anywhere else, I think.
Yeah, and that's what we're hearing as well. Certainly from hotels and resorts, we've heard that there's slightly better revenue or sales outside of Halifax. As Halifax is the majority population, they're leaving the city on the weekend. Luc, have you heard from restaurants in other Atlantic provinces? Is it better there, or did they see a lift, or do you know?
No, it's interesting, the words you use there, when they go on weekends, and that has really been the problem with the Atlantic bubble. People are going for weekends, going away for a weekend or a long weekend. With reduced capacity, what we're finding is we're not able to serve this to customers on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, because we hit our capacity that we're restricted to. So the Atlantic bubble, people tend to move on the weekends, and that's not when we need the business. We need the business during the week, during the days. So that, that is a challenge, and hearing that in particular a lot in PEI, people want to go golfing for a weekend or whatnot. The borders have been a real problem within Atlantic Canada. The lineups that were in PEI in New Brunswick really negatively impacted the Atlantic bubble and the impact. I don't understand why we didn't, put the bubble around the outside Atlantic Canada and open the internal borders. I don't understand that part. And an Atlantic bubble really didn't have any impact on Newfoundland and Labrador.
Right. So Luc, your national perspective, when you speak to your sort of the rest of Restaurants Canada across the country, there really is no bubble in the rest of Canada. You can travel interprovincially across the country other than Atlantic Canada and a small part of Manitoba, but every other province is open. Are they seeing, is tourism up in those markets, or are restaurants, when you speak to folks in other markets, are they doing better or worse, or have you heard?
I think it's universal pain. Canadians are tending to travel within their own provinces. It doesn't matter what province you're in, you are feeling the pains of this pandemic, and the numbers are pretty consistent across the country. It's actually kind of interesting that in Atlantic Canada, we were some of the first provinces to open up to restaurants, and a lot of provinces, use what we're doing in Atlantic Canada, and they opened, because even a province like Ontario, it was only a few short weeks ago where a city like Toronto allowed indoor dining. So we have been, a bit of a leader when it comes to that. But in terms of impacts, it is countrywide, and it really is impacting our industry. And as Gordon talked about earlier, particularly the urban areas are really devastated in terms of business travelers, tourists, there are no shows to go to, there's no, shopping, and people are scared to go in malls. So it really is, there's a lot of pain from coast to coast.
Right. Yeah, I think people are unaware. I mean, the reality is that Halifax, or Nova Scotia, I should say, it is a Nova Scotia number, but it's predominantly Halifax. Almost 500,000 room nights come from business travelers. And of those 500,000 room nights, again, you'd probably triple that to get the breakfast, lunch, and dinner that occur. Some of them obviously inside the hotel, but many of them at local restaurants. So you start to think about the order of magnitude. We do have a question here, and I don't want to get to, I want to get back to maybe some good news, as we get to the end of this, but someone has asked, with office workers back at only 25%, as we learned yesterday, or many offices back, or not back at all, I suppose. When I speak to some large employers downtown, they don't plan to come back until January, which I'm certainly concerned about, and don't know if that represents the level of pandemic that we have in Nova Scotia. But nonetheless, that is their plan. So what kind of closure numbers, if you do see any, do you expect to see as the fall hits? Gordon, maybe I'll go to you.
Well, there's a couple of things it's going to depend upon. Right now, the lifeline for many restaurants is the wage subsidy program and the rent relief program, because those two are fairly big ticket items. Now, there are other big ticket items like HST and other items, obviously salary costs of operating a restaurant. But those two, that is where the bulk of our industry is surviving today. If those two were in place, we would be already on a deep downslide already. The problem with coming into the fall, we're going to add to that the lack of potential customers coming into restaurants to eat. So that could be the third piece. And of course, the big unknown is we do not know if the government is planning to do wage subsidy program to the end of the year, and actually really to the end of, at least the end of the first quarter of 2021. It's along with the rent. Now, we understand the rent is coming. We know it's not been well used. We know there's 2/3 of the fund still left. So we expect that will continue to at least till that fund is dried up. And that would probably carry us into the first quarter. But that's the big challenge right now. Like we would see a massive slide. That people, and Luke's already talked about the numbers, there are a lot of people that shouldn't be open right now because they're actually going deeper in debt. They're not going ahead. They're open because they want to be open. They're entrepreneurs. They want to make it happen. And those challenges are too big for an individual operator to handle by themselves.
Yeah. Well, and Luke, sort of in that vein, Gordon alluded to some of the supports that are available. Can you point to some of the supports that have worked and what's still needed from government?
Well, Gordon talked about the wage subsidy is so important. We're really, we like that they expanded it, beyond, had a bit of a sliding scale, because what was happening, we'd have people that may have sales be 60% down and are not eligible. So those type of things really help that they put some flexibility. But we're really concerned about it ending in December. And that is our top priority is lobbying the federal government for an extension of the wage subsidy. At the provincial level, we continue to need more support. And, sometimes it's it's cash. Nova Scotia has given us a few grants. We'd like to see something like this federal loan program where a portion of it is you don't have to pay back, because quite frankly most restaurants cannot afford to take on more debt. So we're willing to take some loans if some of it is forgivable. So we'd like to see an expansion of that. I think governments could also do some things in terms of maybe have higher temporary increases in our wholesale pricing on alcohol as a way to put more cash into our pockets. Maybe give us some tax credits for our PPE that we've purchased and the barriers. Our estimate that it costs approximately $30,000 to $40,000 per restaurant to reopen. You know, we had to buy new food, we had to train staff, we had to buy PPE, we had to put plexiglass barriers. You know, those are huge upfront costs, and we need more help in terms of recouping some of those costs and moving forward, you know, with that. So, you know, as crass as it may sound, we do need some direct financial support, because we are, you know, we are a huge revenue generator for governments. For every dollar spent in a restaurant, $1.85 is spent in the restaurant, the rest of the community, be it your local brewer, your fisher, your farmer, your designer, your electrician. You know, we are so important to the economy, so we need support. You know, we did not choose to shut down. Government mandated that we shut down. So I think government has a responsibility, and it's incumbent upon government to, you know, give us support and give us more relief. Simply deferring taxes, deferring municipal taxes doesn't help us. You know, our statistics are showing and our modeling that it is going to take at least a year for us to reach positive cash flow. And we're going to continue to need support to get through the winter and onto the other side in the spring.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. And I think, you know, what we see in, at least in Nova Scotia, is that a lot of people pick up additional revenue during the summer with the increased number of visitors that we would normally have. Clearly that has not happened this year. There have been, Gordon, some shop local campaigns or buy Halifax. We've worked with a number of groups on the post promise to encourage people to post a sign that says they're clean and make the post promise. So we should, I don't know if we can put up a link to that. We should try to put up a link to that for all of the folks that are with us today. But have some of these campaigns, these shop local campaigns, have they positively impacted the sector, Gordon?
I would say that any campaign like that is going to add some value to it. In terms of having a double-digit statistic growth, probably not. But I think at the end of the day, if that constant messaging out there about, you know, buy local, use your restaurants, go out, have a meeting in person, you know, get out, do that. That's all a very positive thing. And I think that's probably really worthwhile to continue. I know that we're going to continue to do that. And we're looking at 2 new campaigns right now, but one is about building confidence and the other one's about, you know, having safe restaurants and stuff like that, and get out and use your local one. Because mentioning earlier, you know, restaurants are spread evenly across Nova Scotia, just like a footprint of the population. It does affect every community. So it's a very important piece of our social fabric in Nova Scotia for sure.
Yeah. Luc, I did get a comment from Todd who said that he doesn't think the border is hard to get through. He went to PEI and he had no trouble, I guess, either getting there or getting back. So do you think it's getting easier, or do you think it's getting harder, or maybe you just went on a bad day?
No, I think it's getting better. Like anything that has happened in this crisis, there are always some bumps getting started. And you know, they've made some adjustments. They're getting used to it. It's new for government. It's new for everyone. So yes, it is getting better. But also the numbers are down. You know, from my conversations with restaurateurs and PEI, the peak was probably 2 weeks ago, and things have already started to tail off a little bit for the season. So there are probably fewer people traveling, but it has gotten better. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's fair. Okay. I see Becky has posted a link to the post promise in the chat, so everyone can see the chat. You can click on the post promise, and as well you can click on the Buy Halifax link for the Buy Halifax campaign. And just to let any restaurateurs who are listening to us, I guess, or watching this today, if you do want to tag Halifax Chamber, if you do a tweet and recommend your own facility or your own restaurant, we're happy to retweet that to our 13,000 members to encourage them to get to your establishment, as I know many people have been trying to do over the last while. Gordon, what are you hearing from employees of these businesses right now? Or I mean, has it gotten better over the last few months, or what are you hearing?
Well, I think generally for the employees, the ones that are back, and there's certainly a considerable number that are not back yet. The ones that are back are pleased to be back, working hard. I find it challenging. I think wearing a mask in a hot weather or humidity is pretty tough stuff for a lot of them. We get a lot of concerns and basically complaints that way, but I think everybody's doing their best overall. And besides employees being back, there actually has been some new hires for some restaurants. They've actually had to hire people just to clean. For example, people forget about the normal duty of a waiter waitress wouldn't be able to keep up with the demand of wiping down everything and still looking after their customers. So that's been a big challenge. I think the worry for a lot of employees is longer term. Exactly what we're kind of hitting in the background is where is, how long am I going to have a job? Where is it going? Are we going to survive? And that's a big question mark for us all. You know, if the programs continue, if there's enough business out there to keep people through the winter, it'll be helpful. But there's definitely going to be a dent in the employment market in our sector that will probably not come back ever, I think.
Yeah, I actually saw a tweet from the Halifax Partnership this morning that showed the impact of employment by industry. I would try to bring it up, and I'm sure I'd mess it up. I don't think I can find it. I'm just going to quickly look and see if I can find it. Yeah, there it is. Look at that. So I'm going to post that on screen. And it shows Nova Scotia change on employment by industry. You can see in April to April. So this was back in the bad days of April. But you can see that, you know, public administration was up 3.8. Way down here in accommodation and food service, we see a decline of 45.8% in employment in that category. So obviously at that time a significant decline. And I mean, Luke, how many people are employed in this category in Nova Scotia or in the Maritimes?
Yeah, when we look at you know, just strictly food service in Nova Scotia, as I said, we were one of the largest private sector employers. We actually employ 38,000 people.
Wow.
In the peak of this crisis, we had lost about 24,000 jobs. Since then, we recovered some of them, and we're probably still down, you know, 8,000 to 10,000 jobs in this province right now. And it's been a real challenge getting employees back. And you know, that's something we have expressed concern to the federal government about some of their programs. You know, CERB has, you know, in a lot of cases, we are competing with CERB, particularly in terms of servers, counter staff, and it's been, you know, a real challenge. Also the program, and we're happy they made to the adjustments of one of the things we were looking at is, you know, as soon as you earn over $1,000, you could lose CERB. So that was a difficulty to attract employees. So, you know, it has been tough. We still have concerns with the move to EI. We like that they've changed a little bit in terms of the 50-cent clawback instead of losing it all. But there's still some work to be done to make it viable to bring our employees back, because it really has been a challenge. Yeah.
And Gordon, do you think employees feel supported and safe from the management teams that they work with, and maybe even government?
I would say, generally speaking, yes. Most employers are very concerned. They know the due diligence that's required, and it takes a lot of the employees' due diligence. They're probably, I think, employees and employers would be considered looking at also what's going to happen this winter. Is the flu season going to impact? Is it the second wave coming? We've already seen a couple little triggers happen with the student population coming in, the university one. That can be another trigger. So those I think will be the next wave of concern for employees and employers also.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into my own opinions, and I don't want everybody on the call to get mad at me, but we've actually banned the word second wave at the chamber. We're not allowed to say second wave anymore, and the reason for that, I think, is this is simply an ongoing problem. You know, it's not going to go away until there's a vaccine. So we need to learn to work with COVID in our environment. And wearing masks and physically distancing in public spaces is certainly going to help with that, I think. So we need to make sure that we all continue to follow the health orders, but you know, we can take those masks down as we head into the restaurants. The changes, Luke, that many bars and restaurants made, and you kind of alluded to this. I mean, I think clean and cleanliness was a thing for restaurants before it was a thing for the rest of us. with COVID-19 and the changes we need to make. But do you think many of these changes will continue after COVID is a distant memory?
Oh, I think there are a lot of things happening with COVID that will stick around long after COVID is gone. I think the cleaning and disinfecting, I think that's we do it anyway, but I think that's going to last for quite a while. I think we'll see the masks and the barrier, once the restrictions are gone, the mask and the barriers will go away. But I think the biggest thing we're going to see is the way we've adapted as an industry to the consumer. I think that has a lot of stickiness. So so what I mean by that is, like, we already saw over 2018, 2019, year over year, 50% increases in digital ordering, in online ordering, in third-party delivery. That has just skyrocketed since COVID-19, with curbside pickup, digital ordering, takeout delivery. And I think those things are going to stay. We're already seeing it because of the millennial is now the customer. They're driving the businesses, no longer the baby boomers, and they grew up with a phone in their hand. So I think that's going to stick around and is here forever. I also think we're going to see, at least the whole emphasis on local and back to supporting your local restaurant. Restaurants are encouraging the use of local products, buying local products. Customer wants local products. Where that was already a trend, we've seen that really increase more. Contactless payment now, that has come to the forefront during COVID. That's going to stick around. So I think we're going to see other things, other food trends that we've seen that have happened, and I think will stick around, is simplification of menus. We went bare bones in a lot of cases, and in order to be open, reduce costs, we simplified the menus. I think that's going to stick around because it is cheaper to run a smaller menu. So we're looking to save every dollar we can. So I think that's going to happen. Many restaurants also went into family style dining, where you buy, the chicken dinner, the 2 sides, the gravy, and the drinks for takeout to bring home. I think, that we're going to see a lot more of that, because also people have come to want to eat with their families and become used to eating with their families. So I think that trend in terms of family style bundling will stick around as well.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Gordon, I see a question here from Todd. He said that many employees are down in hours per month, but they don't qualify for CERB because they're just over that $1,000 mark. So they're actually in that messy middle, I think. So he's down 55 hours a month. Do you think restaurants should be more sympathetic to employees, try to perhaps have more employees, keep them under $1,000 a month? Or do you think that government should just increase the $1,000 to $1,500 or $2,000 to allow more flexibility for employees?
Well, the easiest solution would be the government increase the amount. That would make it a lot easier. Otherwise, what you're asking an operator to do is choose, like, do you want a lot of people not making enough money to survive, or would you rather be able to support a stronger staff and maintain them for a longer period of time? And that's the challenge. It's not necessarily a black and white. It's a lot of gray areas, and the problem is that there just isn't sufficient business in most cases for them to carry it. So I know that we've been lobbying the government to extend that and make that a higher amount, because that is a little bit of a weak area. And we know that it's a numbers game, and always when you develop a formula for something, there's always a little hole somewhere, and that's the hole for our sector overall. And because we require X number of people operate a restaurant, whether it's at 100% capacity or 50% capacity, generally speaking, we're still having to use the same number of people, which is very, very challenging. And we've been mandated to close. We were closed for 78 full days. We've been reopened for 90 days. And if you look at where we were in January, we were forecasting probably our best year in history. And by the end of February, we're forecasting the worst year in history, 60 days later.
Yeah.
But I think the CERB though will not, CERB is scheduled to wind down at the end of September. And so I don't think that will be a problem anymore. We're moving to a strictly EI system.
Yeah.
And so they've changed the rules there. And I can't at the top of my head remember what the threshold level is. But once you've reached a certain threshold, it's only a 50% clawback. It's not all or nothing like the CERB was.
Yeah.
I think the expectation to try to ask an employer to manage every single staff person in terms of making $1,000 or not is, I don't know if you've gone through those guidelines. They're crazy to understand. So much of it depends on what date you hired the person and what time period, and what 2-week period. So I think a lot of people are happy to see the tail end of that because it was very, very complicated. Because I think there are going to be a lot of employees who are going to wake up and, at the end of the tax year and say, oh my goodness, I owe a whole bunch of money back because, I didn't do this correctly because so much depended on, what period you were hired and what period you worked the hours. It really was a red tape intensive system.
Yeah. No, good point. Gordon, back to you. So what can the city do to assist restaurants and bars as we head into the cooler months? So we're sitting here in Halifax. They were some help, I think, by waiving some fees, I think, on patios, but you can correct me.
Yep.
What else can they do?
So the patio fees was one of the asks, and they did that very quickly. I must say that all levels of government have reasonably good responses. The city, certainly Halifax, had responded very quickly to that. We've also pushed for extension of the patio season, and I think that's probably going to happen. And I think that the patios will migrate into something slightly different, much longer season. If you look at, you're in Quebec City, Montreal, or Toronto, you'd sit out in the middle of winter in a chair on a sidewalk having a glass of wine or a coffee or a croissant. And I think you're going to see a little bit more of that. The taxes are a tough nut. Taxes are due and they can't defer the taxes. There will be some changes to provincial legislation which will assist. But again, we're talking about deferral. We're not talking about getting rid of them. And that's just added baggage you're going to have to carry around with you overall. There are some other things the city have done. They've closed off the streets, making more green spaces, making more parks available for people. So if you look around the city, you'll see little pockets of restaurants opening up here and there where they can. And that's good to see, and hopefully that will continue to encourage that to happen. And the city, we're working with, for example, Discover Halifax in a couple of campaigns. The Dine Around program last year was very big. We're going to implement that, not just in the city, but we're going to do it right across the province. So they're involved, and there's a number of good things happening. I think the city is doing what they can do overall.
Yeah. And do you think, Luke, that restaurants are out there buying heaters right now for patios?
Oh yeah.
I would think a lot of them are buying heaters and blankets and whatnot because the reality is there's a significant portion of the of customers who are concerned about indoor dining and they prefer to go to their patios and so I think we're going to do everything we can to extend the season. That's feasible. The reality is we do live in Canada, so it gets really cold and it might not work, but it's interesting. I've been to Europe and in Scandinavia and people are sitting out with a blanket in December or January having a beer. It's quite normal. So it's, I think we're going to see a lot of this. I think the city did a good job at allowing us to have permanent patios a couple of years ago. And we're hoping for more flexibility for those who want to try to keep their patio open to allow us to do it. It's actually kind of interesting. I just read a story about Paris where they're banning patio heaters because of after 2021 because of greenhouse gases. They said doesn't make sense to heat the outdoors. So I don't know what's going to happen in the long term with something like patio heaters, but in the short term, definitely, I think we're going to see operators do everything they can, put up wind barriers, heaters, blankets, you name it. Maybe even adjust their menus to a product that's, a French onion soup is probably easier to eat on a table than an open platter or something when it's cold outside because it would retain its heat. So I think we're seeing, and what we're seeing in the industry is just the innovation, the resilience, and I would think operators will be adjusting their menus to make it more conducive to continue outdoor dining in cold areas.
Yeah, well, and that was a question from Kathleen, so thank you. I think you answered it without me asking it. So that's great. And yes, I've certainly seen many locations where outside dining in the cold weather, or certainly outside drinking, having a drink is the norm. And with a patio heater, it's actually quite lovely. But we still should encourage people. It is absolutely safe to go inside. So, although it's a great idea to participate on the patio or continue with the patio. What Luke, can restaurants and bars do to, I guess here I have wave 2, but although I said I banned it, look, it's in my questions. But, what can they do to prepare for that? And are there some things they can do to prepare for that?
I think just continue doing what we're doing. I think we have to continue to communicate with staff. I think we have to, continue to screen employees, let them know, how they're operating. I think the best thing the customer can see is, that we're continuously cleaning, we're wearing our mask, we have, to give the customer the confidence that we're doing all we can. Don't have your staff walking around with their masks untied around their neck. It just doesn't instill the confidence that you're doing all you can. So once again, be vigilant, follow the direction of the public health authorities, and to Doc Strang's credit, we've clashed over issues over the years, but he has had a pretty good open door with both Gordon and I, and I know when we ran up with some hurdles about operating hours and how liquor licenses worked, he readily admitted, he said, "Oh, I didn't understand that, how he worked," and he made adjustments. So, they're concerned about the viability and the economic feasibility of the industry. And if, we come with reasonable requests, and they've been more than welcome to work with us, and, trying to strike that balance between mitigating the risk to the public and staff, but allowing us to be economically feasible.
Great. Yeah, great. So Gordon, one of those, oh, sorry, go ahead. Do you want to say something?
I was just going to add something to that. So from our association, one of the things that we are recommending, and it's not mandatory at all under the guidelines, is that we're recommending people still take a name from a party, and a name and either a phone number or an email address, and keep it for 25 days. And we're actually looking at an app now that we would be able to offer to restaurants. They can actually do it seamlessly so that they're not having to touch anything, and it does keep the record automatically for a period of time and then goes away. That would be helpful in particular the tracking and tracing, and which is part of why we're going to be able to stay open. That's really important to be able to reinforce that. So that's one thing. The other thing I think that particularly the operators are going to have to watch very closely is the health of their own employees. If we go into a cold season, flu season, you should make sure that, if possible, people get a flu shot, or making sure if they have any cold symptoms at all, stay home. Most people like to come to work. They don't want to lose their tips or whatever. The fact is, you really got to do a really tough due diligence on making that stand firm.
Yeah, absolutely. So Gordon, I have another question here. It says, do you think restaurants are going to continue the off sales for alcohol for takeout permanently? And would that include bars that don't sell food for off sale?
So the answer to the first one is that yes, I think that is going to stay in place. I think that it behooves government to do it, behooves the restaurants. It's a new add-on. It will definitely help, particularly sit-down restaurants overall. I don't think at this stage that's going to migrate to bar-only service. I don't think the government's, that's only even on their radar screen at this stage of the game. But I do think that the regular sale of wine, beer, and cider from sit-down restaurants with a meal with a proportionate price tag against value of the meal is going to stay in place.
Okay, great.
And I think that alcohol issue is like, it's almost like some of the local programs you talked about. It's not a silver bullet. It's not going to save the industry, but it's one of those incremental things that all helps. Our survey showed that 53% of restaurants said it was positive for their business. The others, it had no impact. So if you can help a few restaurants by that incremental sale, it's going to be positive. And this is a trend that we saw long before COVID. You know, we've been actually talking about this issue to governments for over 2 years. And it's amazing what a crisis, how fast government can work when they have a crisis in front of them. Does it still have challenges? Absolutely. We think that it's ridiculous that you cannot sell spirit-based coolers with takeout and delivery. We think it's ridiculous that third-party delivery services cannot partake in this system. It has to be your own employees. So those are two changes that we're looking at in terms of this legislation, and we have made overtures to government. But you know, it's around for the long run. It's hard to put that genie back in a bottle. You know, I don't see us, you know, becoming a mobile bar. That's not something we're asking for. You know, we see it as an incremental piece of your business to go along with a meal, and we're not looking to be a direct competitor to the liquor store.
Yeah, and I think we would absolutely agree with you. In fact, I think we'd push to go further, as I think it sounds like you're pushing, with perhaps the opportunity. I mean, when I looked at Citadel Hill this summer and saw perhaps one family or one couple up there having a picnic, when there could have been hundreds of people from some of those downtown condos having a picnic with a bottle of wine, and yet I believe right now that's illegal to sit on Citadel Hill and have a bottle of wine while you sit there. And you alluded to some of the European countries. I don't think it's an issue there. So anyway, certainly additional opportunities. And you both kind of talked a little bit about the red tape. Is there some overriding red tape that you think we need to get rid of with government? I'll kind of toss it out to both of you.
I think my comment would be, you know, there's always going to be regulation and you know, and red tape. I guess so. What this crisis showed, you know, sometimes how quickly government can move. And I guess that's what I would like to see, is this process of open doors, concerned about business. When something needs to be changed, they seem willing and able to do it quickly. I think that's the more important legacy than a specific regulation that's irking us at this point. You know, I think they were more than willing to make changes, and in most cases moved quickly and really had the best interest of the business in, and took the business consideration when they looked at regulatory change. And I guess what I'd like to see in terms of government policy and initiatives, you know, at least for the medium term, is almost a do no harm policy. You know, government is always looking to change regulations and legislation. And, you know, I think the state of the industry is in, don't bring forward any changes that are going to add costs to business. We just can't afford it. We will close. And that's everything from a workers' comp change to a labor standards change, to a labor relations change, to environmental change. Don't start hitting us with new fees, new taxes, new anything, because we just can't afford it. So, you know, it's a term I'm using during my New Brunswick election campaign that I'm working on now. It's like, let's have do no harm policies towards small business when we're in the middle of this crisis and until we return back to normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gordon, I guess comments that you'd like to make, maybe the same ones, or?
Well, there's some stuff that we, you know, can move on. For example, a simple little thing like dogs on patios. I mean, 2 years ago, we had that approved, and the day before it was announced, they pulled it off the shelf. I've never gotten a reason why. And you know what? It will actually add a lot of value to sales, because we're a big dog population. They like to take their animals out. It's a simple little thing like that. Other things like for example, for rent relief programs. You know, if landlords are not willing to participate to help the industry out overall, why should governments be leasing from these people? Put them on a list. If you're not supporting the industry and not supporting your province, then you should be on a no rent list, and get them out of the way. So there are things that are kind of outside the proliferary that which we normally deal with that would be worthwhile to kind of see up on an agenda. And of course, I think the regulatory review thing is extremely important. Start going through regulations. I know that we went through and we're looking at the regulation changes from alcohol and gaming, and they've been picking them off one at a one. They're not major by themselves, but eventually they all add up, they add some value overall. So that continuous review of regulation is extremely important.
Well, and as a dog owner, I think I will absolutely agree with that. In fact, there was a restaurant which shall remain nameless that allowed dogs last year for a brief moment in time, and then I think there was a complaint, and sadly that restaurant was unable to do it after. But and therefore, I guess we still got takeout, so we were okay, and maybe the restaurant was okay. But I would have rather sat there for an hour and a half and enjoyed the view. Yeah, go ahead.
It's actually interesting in terms of alcohol, what Gordon was talking about, regulations. You know, we've actually worked on a regulation that the alcohol and gaming has approved. I think there's 5 or 6 of them that are key irritants, like, you know, minors on patios, minors being able to be in a lounge, not eating a meal, being able to hire minors in establishments. Those are all approved by alcohol and gaming, have done all their consultation, and they're sitting somewhere in a black hole of government that you know, continuously poke and prod and saying, when are you passing those changes? So that's some red tape that I know Gordon and I, you know, we both agreed with all these changes close to 2 years ago, and we'd still like to see happen, because those are the ones that really irritate tourists or people that aren't from here, where, you know, at 8:30 their kids have to be, you know, out of this section of the restaurant because it turns into a lounge. So those are some progressive ones that have been approved. We just need a seal of approval from cabinet.
Okay, well, one of my final questions was going to be, what can the chamber do to help this industry? But maybe you've kind of already left me with that, which is maybe we can help to advocate as well for our members, many of whom are restaurants, and for both of the associations, to kind of get things out there. So just as a, you know, we're wrapping up here. So Gordon, I'll let you have a final word. What would you like us to think about? What would you like our listeners or viewers to think about over the next while?
Well, I think for the next while, it's if you're an operator and working in the industry, more due diligence. You're going to have to stay that due diligence to stay the course, and it's going to be tough. But if you're an entrepreneur, we know that you'll do it. The other thing is the shift to migration to getting customers to feel good, and that individual restaurants can do items like that. They can post people in restaurants enjoying themselves. They can have people do testimonials about doing that. That will be an important migration. And the other thing is to reach out to associations like Luc and ours. If you have a concern, let us know. Most of the stuff ends up to be ammunition that we can use to support our cases overall through the chamber. And I think that's one of the great things, the chamber, you've opened a big door for us. And, you know, when we can sit once a week with you know, the parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Finance and ask him any questions, and then follow up with 20 more after the call is over. That's a very valuable thing. That networking is valuable. So getting those questions or issues up the pipeline is very valuable to people like Luc and I to be able to continue that course.
That's great, thank you. And Luc, any final comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, you know, I think echoing what Gordon said, you know, you know, it's kind of weird. While all 3 of our associations are competitors, and sometimes you as a business member, you know, you say, oh, geez, I have to pay another fee. I have to pay another fee. I just think how important it is to support the various associations. We all do good work. We all do a little bit different type of work, and we join together in many fights. So I think it's important to, you know, to support the associations. In terms of Restaurants Canada, you know, we have, you know, as I said, go to our website, restaurantscanada.org. We have tons of webinar, economic research we're doing all the time. Our group buying program is phenomenal. And last but not least, as a business owner, you know, reach out to your local politician. Tell them what's happening to your business. Don't assume they know. You know, as much as I bang on doors, or Patrick or Gordon with politicians and decision makers, nothing resonates like the local business owner who provides jobs, pays taxes. So it's just important to be engaged and share those engagements with your associations, because as Gordon says, it helps us, uses it as leverage and just one more set of eyes and ears out there in the background. So thank you for your support and the opportunity to speak to you today. Happy to follow up with any questions by email or whatever. Thanks.
Well, and I can't agree with you more. I think people don't realize the power that a local MLA or MP or even city councilor has when enough voices are raised. So you should raise your voice to your local person for sure, and let us know that you've done it. All of us know that you've done it, so that we can reinforce that. We're talking often to ministers, but they need to hear the voice of the backbenchers behind them, and I can tell you it makes a real difference. So I would really encourage you to do that. Thank you both very much for joining us today. I would say, I don't think I have to say to get out there and go to restaurants, go to bars, go to lounges, whether it's takeout on a Tuesday or Taco Tuesday, or takeout Friday, or in restaurant dining at noon on Thursday, which I'm going to do today. We all need to do our part. So I've saved some money on parking the last few months, and I can assure you I'm going to spend it in our local restaurants. So thanks very much for joining us today, and thank you all for joining us. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you both. Thanks.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you
Thanks to the
very
Chamber
much
for putting this on.
Bye. Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care, all.